shelling out money, anything, ayy. Ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the bag, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy. Ayy, let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Friday, everybody. I got a very special guest for you guys here today. He's been on the show in the past. And, you know, when it comes to theft, fraud, cyber, all of this stuff that's going on out there, I really enjoy talking to him. He's in the trenches. He lives this life. He walks that walk. And we're going to talk about what some very common misconceptions are that a lot of organizations are falling victim to right now. It's not always just the theft itself. It's what can you do to protect your organization in the event that it does happen to you. You got to be out there and you got to be proactive, because trust me, guys, attorneys, insurance, they're really hoping you had a bad day and didn't do that stuff, so they don't have to pay in that event, and you're going to be liable. So with that being said, I have Mr. Danny Ramon back on the show. Danny, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's always enjoyable.
No, it is. It's like it's seemingly it's evolving so much faster than I think a lot of people even thought about just a couple of months ago. And with where things are, and, you know, again, shout out to, you know, the DOT and the FMCSA for really taking a hard stance on this. And especially with Blitz Week coming up next week here, you know, ELD manipulation is going to be a very big point of emphasis on what they're looking for and stuff like that. But that's only just one component of everything. So you just recently, you just got back. I just found, you know, when we were talking before the show, you were just presenting out there. So what's been new in your world here, Danny?
Yeah, you know, like you say, things are evolving all the time, right? And you just mentioned I came back from the TAPA T1 conference in Atlanta, where I got to present to the crowd a little bit about, you know, cargo theft trends across the globe. And, you know, a panelist on the panel as well was talking about what was happening in the U.S., and it really is changing at such a breakneck speed. When I first started cataloging cargo thefts in this industry back in 2012, you know, there was a period in time when I was like, oh gosh, I want things to change, so I have something to write in this report, because things would never change, right? On a quarterly basis, on an annual basis, the numbers changed, but the trends didn't really. Now we're getting to the point where they're changing faster than we can track them. Every once in a while, you know, the data will show that there's a plateau in cargo theft activity in the United States, maybe even a drop. But anytime that happens, if you wait another quarter or two, of course, it's going to be back up again. And my theory has always been that these folks are, you know, just reaching the bad actors, are reaching their capacity, their personnel capacity, their training capacity, whatever it may be. It's obviously not that they've reached the limit of vulnerable cargo in the United States. One of the things that I ran across with one of my many discussions with folks at this conference was what might be the proof of this, right? Somebody told me about a couple of shipments that they had that looked like they had a fraudulent bad actor involved in a double brokering scenario. They tried to make contact. They were rebuffed. They were not given the answers that they wanted. Nothing was completely criminal, but it was very, very suspicious. Now, those shipments actually ended up making it to their destination just fine. But by reviewing the details with this individual, I was able to come up with a theory that it seems like these folks are putting more irons in the fire than they have capacity to take out.
Okay.
So if they're hunting down loads on load boards, they're in trusted carrier networks, they're going to book loads, right? Let's say I've got capacity for 2 thefts next week, but I schedule 8. What's the penalty for me delivering the other 6? Oh, I get paid. And then at the beginning of the week, I have my pick of 8 different shipments. Which ones do I prioritize? Which ones are the most in demand and easiest to liquidate? Which ones are going to command the highest price? And then you've got your pick of the litter at that point.
So is that like a global evolution? Because you said you guys were kind of talking out on a global scale there. Is that kind of those trends across the globe, or is that specifically here inside of the United States? Do you think that's a growing trend?
It will be. Now, the thing is that here in the U.S., we are the canaries in the coal mine. We're the tip of the spear when it comes to strategic theft methods, right? They're being honed and refined here, and we're starting to see the beginnings of them take hold in Europe. And it only makes sense. A lot of the folks who sit at the top of these transnational criminal organizations who are coordinating this fraudulent and fictitious thefts in the U.S., they sit over there. It makes sense that they're going to start practicing these thefts over there. And there's incentive for them to do it, right? They've already honed the craft here. They've developed, upwards of 36 different MOs that they can mix, match, and layer depending on the target. And it's going to take some very, very slight adjustments to adapt these techniques to the European market, especially in the European Union. Now, you think of the fact that in the European Union, truckers can cross international borders in the same speed that they cross through states here in the United States, right? That's going to obviously frustrate recovery and investigation efforts. But beyond that, one of the big things that we are looking at here in the States is carrier verification, right? There's a whole cottage industry that has popped up around carrier verification in the last few years, and rightly so. It's a huge problem. But a lot of that is based either A, on user information, user reviews, or B, publicly accessible information from government entities like the USDOT and the FMCSA. There is no USDOT equivalent. There is no FMCSA equivalent for the European Union. They just trust every country to maintain records as they see fit and hope that that's going to be adequate. But again, like in the US, those national agencies are regulatory, not enforcement agencies, right? So what that's going to do is it's going to create a whole bunch of different hotbeds for fraudulent activity. And when I say fraudulent activity, this is where the bad guys are going to set up shop, not necessarily where they're going to start practicing these thefts, right? But because of the variety, the socioeconomic diversity, and the geopolitical diversity across the European Union, there's going to be various countries and regions that'll be more friendly to their tactics. Just because they haven't come across that yet, but it will spread. I mean, obviously that's where they're going to set up, but because of the porousness of the EU borders, they'll be able to attack anywhere.
Yeah. Now, do you think things are evolving in a sense of where it's not necessarily the smash and grab, get as much as you can in as quick as amount of time as you can, that, maybe used to be a thing? Do you you were talking about how, hey, they might have overcommitted to their theft for the week, and now they got 6 extra shipments. Oh, they'll just go ahead and get paid for that. Do you think that that's kind of one of those things where, because, I've been on numerous panels where we've talked about this ad nauseum about what's next. And I'm still of the mindset, I'm not saying that they're not evolving, they're not getting smarter, they're not looking for other ways to do it. But I also look at it it's very profitable to move this stuff fast, right? It's not like, you look at it where, these are all hypothetical numbers, all hypothetical examples here, you guys. I don't want anybody to think that I have any secret data, but it's hey, say this load pays $4,000, right? That shipment liquidated, whatever it is, candy bars, cotton swabs, whatever the street, where it's that's $15,000 is what they can liquidate that entire truckload for. Mm-hmm. So it's I think they're looking at that where it's that's not as profitable to take that $4,000 one. And that's why I think eventually it's going to pick back up to where they're hey, we got to backfill this because we're losing money if we're only getting $4,000 from this transaction. We weren't going to pay the driver anyways. We weren't going to pay our, for the equipment. So it's a pure profit game for them. And it's like, I look at this as criminals at the end of the day are always more often than not going to look at the path of least resistance to continue to do this. And that's why it's like operationally, I look at, whether you're a broker or maybe you are a carrier and you have a leased on owner, you're like, your vetting procedures on who you're working with and who you continue to work with, because I think that is an area that companies get exploited in. Once a carrier is set up with them and they pass that initial verification, they stop the vetting process. They stop looking for those anomalies to be like, wait a second here, you have 5 trucks. Why are you taking 20 loads from us in a week? Style thing. They overlook it. And especially right now, Danny, with where the market is and how things are trending, brokers in particular, are going to start getting desperate to cover their freight, and they're going to start turning a blind eye to a lot of this stuff again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to note that, while things are evolving, we're not dropping MOs off of the tail end in on the less sophisticated end, right? All types of cargo theft that have existed in the United States still exist in the United States.
Yeah.
We're talking most about strategic theft and fictitious and fraudulent theft, because that's the one that's growing the quickest, right?
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. When it comes to what they're targeting, they're highly agile. And part of what has changed their targeting is the change in the criminal structure, right? The traditional organized criminal structure is multi-layers, multiple points of contact, from the crew who goes out to steal it, to the boss who goes out, who tells them what to go steal, to the fence who's going to take that product, and the distributors who are going to send it off all over the world or the country. Every step in there takes a cut, right? Yeah. All of a sudden, the crew who goes out and steals a $250,000 load of televisions may only get $30,000, $40,000 for it.
Yeah.
Right. That's probably about what they would usually get. Now, we've moved from that to criminal direct to consumer, right? Especially with a lot of these strategic and fraudulent thefts, they're drop shipping to various warehouses, third-party warehouses, whether it's e-tail or big box stores that allow third-party sellers, or they're liquidating it via social media marketplaces. But the reason is because they're looking for things that are going to sell quickly, and it's because it's no longer the crew goes out and steals the truck, brings it back to the boss, and the boss hands them cash.
Yeah.
Right. They have to liquidate the cargo before they realize the payday.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden, even though they're getting 100% of the profit minus platform fees, they want to be rid of the evidence, and they want to have their cash as quick as possible. So that changes the calculus, on what exactly they're pursuing. And when it comes to the continued verification, 100%. These guys operate legitimately in the supply chain. They see when holes get plugged, and they, like you mentioned, like water, they're going to look for the next easiest, most accessible crack to flow through.
So when they're using third party, like, I'm not blaming TikTok, but you look at TikTok Shop, for example, right? Like, that's a very big thing. And then, you also look at Amazon as well. Again, not blaming Amazon, but you look at a lot of these things, and now is not only is it, cargo theft, but then it's financial crimes as well, right? Because like, last time I checked, you can't pay cash for Amazon, right? Like, you can't pay cash for TikTok. So like, therefore, that is being tracked somewhere. There is a legal entity out there that is processing, assuming that they have this set up legally in that regard. Or so it's like, again, what other ways now are that, is the FBI or other, 3-letter agencies out there in the government going to start tracking this and then putting those financial crimes, because that's what it's seemingly to me now. It's not just theft. It's a financial crime at that point.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the mechanisms by which they practice this masks the origins, right? They're laundering freight before it ever gets to the point of sale, making it incredibly difficult to reverse track where it came from. Right. And this is absolutely one of their strategies. One of them is to insert them into some of these larger e-tail warehouses where they're not kept track of necessarily by, this batch of this particular of product A came from this seller, and this batch of product A came from another seller. They're just putting it all in the same pile of product A. And if a stolen serial number is discovered, sometimes they can't necessarily determine exactly where it came from. So in that case, even the bad actor still has their inventory on their digital storefront and is still collecting money on that, right? But the other point of that is, like, we've found, A, from a lot of the recoveries that we've enabled, and B, from our connections to the wider intelligence world outside of just cargo theft and supply chain security, that these folks are tied to the biggest, baddest, worst transnational criminal organizations on the planet.
Yeah.
Folks who are directly involved in drug trafficking, human trafficking, weapons smuggling, and even trading in sanctioned enterprise level technologies, as two-way streets are formed between some of these global criminal syndicates. So these folks have resources at their disposal and backing, and they, the folks who run some of these organizations at the very, very top have experience in these financial crimes and how to cover them up. So they are having all of this expertise behind their organizations as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's beyond, like, it's state-sponsored terrorism. Like, that's the only way that I see this. Is I think it's a lot more. To your point there, Danny, I think it's a lot more organized, obviously, but like it's a lot more ingrained in some of these countries across the globe where they're able to do it and they're able to exploit us. And, the money's already gone before we even realize where it is, right? And it's like, to kind of shift a little bit in the conversation, right? How many people out there are operating right now that aren't actually protected? They think they have cargo insurance, they think they're covered, and then they're just going about their day, right? And I mean, I just read an article, I forget what day it was, whether it was Thursday or Wednesday of this week, where a driver pulled in to a truck stop here in Arizona, and he went in to go shower and everything, and then his entire trailer was stolen within 20 minutes. There was like 11 vehicles that pulled up. I guess they have security footage of it or something like that. Mm-hmm. It was all gone. And I mean, is that carrier's insurance even cover that? Probably not, right? Like it maybe, depending on what kind of insurance they have. So it's like, how do organizations actually protect themselves from some of this stuff?
Yeah, prevention's the only way, right? Because even let's say miracle scenario, insurance does cover it. Cool. What does insurance cover? It covers the cost of the cargo that was in the trailer. And maybe it covers the wholesale cost, maybe it covers the retail cost. Either way, it doesn't cover the true cost of the loss, right? There's going to be replacement costs. There's going to be the vacuum that you create in the market from that product missing. There's going to be vendor relationship damage. There's going to be investigative costs. There's going to be, rising insurance costs. There's going to be lost man hours in your organization for the recovery and the investigation of this issue. And then all of this is going to go on top of the fact that then you're going to have to spend on the security that you didn't have in the first place to prevent the theft. Right. And we've determined, through some rough estimations and talking to some folks in the industry, the cost, depending on what the product is between 3 and 7x is the bottom line impact to the organization. 3 to 7x the value of the cargo. And it can go higher depending on what the product is, if we're talking about like pharmaceuticals. But you have to take in mind, like two of the most famous cargo thefts from the last couple of years, the Kit Kat theft very recently, right? They're able to replace those very quickly. They already had the line tooled up. They just pumped out another truckload of Kit Kats. It probably took them about a day to replace that lost stock. Let's think back a little bit longer to the Santo tequila theft, right? Guy Fieri and Sammy Hagar's tequila. That was a Añejo tequila. It takes 2 years to age. You can't just pump out another 2 containers of that immediately. That's going to obviously impact your bottom line a lot more. But prevention is absolutely the key, because it's orders of magnitude easier to prevent your shipment from being stolen than it is to go back and get it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, right? Like, what are some actual prevention things that people can do here, right? Like, I know what we personally do internally. We're not perfect with a lot of what we do, but I look at it is one thing that I've noticed is a lot of the phone mannerisms, we'll call it, are the same as what they were back in 2011 when I first started brokering freight, Danny. And then another thing too, like, I'll never book a load through email, like, at all. If you email me, I'm not booking a load through that. I'll give you a little bit of information, but like, if you think I'm going to just blindly send you a Raycon, that ain't happening, right? So it's like, I look at this is most people are, desperation's a very real thing. Like, I guess maybe from somebody who actually moves freight, you spend so much time prospecting customers, right? You spend so much effort, energy, resources, all of that to go out there and get in front of somebody. And then you start moving freight for them. And, you find yourself in a situation where there's not enough capacity. Maybe you misquoted the load. Desperation starts to creep in. And then all of a sudden you start looking past a lot of those SOPs that you should be operating off of. And then you find yourself in one of these situations. So it's like, from your perspective, Danny, what are some of those things that people should start looking at?
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. Make sure you know who you're doing business with. Carrier verification is an absolute must, but it's only one aspect of protecting your freight, right? Carrier verification, especially when we're talking about the carrier information packet that comes in before the pickup. You also have to make sure that that's who shows up, and that there's, like, verify again the physical entities who show up at the shipping location. Make sure that that is who you expected, and if not, why, and that they are still, proper. But beyond that, I always tell people there is no silver bullet. And again, because we're not having cargo theft methods drop off of the radar, they still exist. The least sophisticated ones still exist, and you still have to guard against those. So my answer is always, because there is no single magic bullet, the first domino that needs to fall is visibility. You can't address a problem that you don't know you have, or if you don't know what that problem is. If all you know is that, hey, I ship it from here and not all of it gets to, the destination, you need to figure out exactly what's going on before you can start issuing corrective action.
Mm-hmm. Now, from my perspective, Danny, how are shippers, because it's like, I look at it like this, like, we could, and this is one of those things that, not trying to tie in a lot of the high profile cases in the brokerage community that are going on right now, but from my perspective, I'm sitting here, Danny, and I'm like, all right, I did all my verifications. I checked all those boxes off. And then maybe the shipper doesn't verify some stuff, or maybe they tendered it to another provider prior to me. That provider failed on the load. I got it. And then that load, another driver comes in and picks it up before my driver arrives. And then what's my liability look like? Because in the shipper's eyes, they're like, I tendered you the load. This is on you. And then you don't find out any of that stuff after the fact.
Right. And that tends to be, that's again where relationships are going to come into play, and verification at every step of the way, right? Because that kind of thing tends to turn into a very hairy civil issue, especially when you're talking to law enforcement trying to recover. If you say, hey, I tendered it to them, they went ahead and did something else, which is a breach of contract. As soon as boots on the ground, law enforcement hear breach of contract, they're done. They're like, this is a civil issue. They cannot slap handcuffs on somebody for breach of contract. That is something that needs to be litigated in a court, right? Yeah. So helping them understand that it's gone beyond that, and then it's actually a criminal issue is huge when you've got law enforcement on the scene. But making sure that all of your supply chain partners are aware of your stance on this. And again, I'm going to keep beating this drum. You can't penalize them for going against your stance and your policy that they've agreed to in writing, unless you've got visibility to know that they're doing that, right, before something bad happens. Because chances are, if they're double brokering things without your knowledge or consent, it's going to be happening many times before one of them goes missing, right? So spotting it beforehand, issuing those consequences, those penalties, making sure they know that, hey, we're watching, we're making sure you're compliant, and if you're not, we're going to remove you from our network, is absolutely paramount. People have to take your freight as seriously as you do. Everybody who touches it needs to take it as seriously as you do.
Yeah, because it's like, I look at with where things are, and it's like, as a broker, it's like, what more can you do? Or as a like a legitimate carrier, what more can you do? Because unfortunately, more times than not, the legitimate trucking companies are the ones who are getting hosed here, because they're the ones who are actually hauling the freight. They're unaware of what's going on, and that's why it's like, everybody, even those. This, with where things are in the market right now that loads are paying better, maybe this isn't going to be as much of a thing. But just a couple of short weeks ago, when things were still pretty chaotic out there on the the rates perspective for the drivers, Danny, it was they were just taking loads because like they didn't know when the next one was going to pop up, and I look at it now where it's like, you got to vet your providers. If you're a carrier, like, you got to vet your brokers at a very, very high level in today's environment, because ultimately it doesn't matter if a load's paying $6 or $7 or $8 a mile right now, Danny. If that person's not going to intend to pay you, you don't vet them. What are you going to do? Go to the shipper? Go to, who knows? Was that even the right shipper? Did they take that and like, there's so many different layers of complexity that come along with this, but it's like, you have to vet your providers. And and I think shippers out there that don't take detailed records of who's picking up the loads, I would assume most of them are, but I don't assume anything at this point. But, that's the thing is I would be taking photos of everything, everybody that goes on. I would even go as far as going out there and taking a photo of the truck and trailer license plate, all of that stuff. If you want to
and VIN. And VIN, because you can't swap the VIN, but you can swap a license plate. But yes, absolutely. I think pictures of the equipment are just as essential as all of the other pictures as well. You absolutely need pictures of the equipment as well, and detailed pictures from all angles.
Yeah, because to me, it's like there's no commodity that's off limits at this point.
Absolutely not. Well, because here's the thing: every commodity that is produced and moved across the country is something that has potential profit behind it. And these folks now have figured out how to extract that profit, right? Of course, they're going for the ones that are most attractive to them, which is the ones that have the combination of the highest resale desire, the most demand for them in the market, coupled with the highest level of cost density. But the prime driver is how quick they can sell it for most of it, right? Yeah. But they are agile. You mentioned TikTok Shop, right? And how you don't blame TikTok Shop. I do a little bit, a little bit, not fully. But I mean, TikTok sets consumer spending behavior and then also caters to it, right? They will make you desire a product and then give you a place to buy it. And it's not, very rarely is it a fully legitimized storefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, I think that with where everything is right now, I mean, I think it's only I think you can only look the other way for so long now, where I think most organizations, again, I think that as an industry here, Danny, top down, we have all allowed this to go on, right? Like we've all allowed this to go on. Everybody wants cheap, people want to ship cheap and this and that and everything under the sun. But I look at it as we're kind of at a critical point here where it's like we have to start making some very deep fundamental changes to the way that we operate to protect the legitimate providers, because my ultimate fear is everybody who wants to do the right thing is eventually just going to throw their hands up in the air and be like, I can't compete. I'm not making any money. And then they all walk away. And then it's completely ran by the wrong people at that point. I hope it doesn't happen, but dude, you just never know, man.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it has the potential to go that way. And it's a troubling trend. Yeah, the industry really just does need to kind of step up as a whole. I think we all, not the security folks, but all the security folks do know that security is often the first corner to be cut. When capacity gets tight, when schedules get tight, unfortunately, in addition to the security folks, the criminals know this too, right? They've been operating legitimately in the supply chain for years. They know, Q4 gets busy and all of a sudden they're filling out less forms on the dock, they're taking less pictures, et cetera. They know when the same things happen in the market. Right. They know when capacity is getting tight. They know when rates are getting higher and people are getting more desperate. They know that security measures are going to be, are going to have their corners cut. It's the same way that they know this is just the strategic and fraudulent guys. Right. We talk about the large scale pilferage guys. They have a whole other set of metrics. They know, for example, what the threshold is for sustained wind speeds before trucks have to pull off the road and park for safety. Yeah. They know when they see that in the forecast, they're going to go start hunting all the truck stops along, I-10 and I-40 in Arizona, because they know, hey, all the trucks are going to be ordered off the road. I'm going to have ripe pickings, a whole bunch of people. They're going to be over capacity. People will probably be parked in, improper areas. These criminals are very perceptive. They're very aware of the trends and how they affect security, and they are agile. They don't have operational overhead. They don't make decision by committee. They don't have to wait for approval. They just go and get when they know things are going to be vulnerable, whether that's because of wind, whether that's because of tight capacity, whether that's because of a recent natural disaster, whatever it may be, or, FIFA or Olympics or whatever it may be. They know this. They know when law enforcement's going to be distracted too or stretched thin.
Yeah, it's so it's like, do you think biometrics is going to be a thing here coming up? Do you think that would be a potential play to severely minimize this, right? Because how many, even if they are a fraudulent bad actor, how many of them want their biometric data being tracked, right? Because that's a very fast track to be, caught no matter what, right? Yeah. That's another. So it's like, what are your thoughts on something like that being like a mandatory requirement?
My thoughts are use every layer possible, right? But also understand that patching vulnerabilities just causes the trickle of water to reroute and divert, right? So if that's all you do, if the only thing you do is require biometrics, Cool. They're just going to send legitimate carriers to pick it up who have nothing to hide and don't mind pressing their thumb to the thumb scanner, right? And then they're going to, it's going to be a blind load that they're going to have repowered by a bad actor carrier who never came into contact with the shipper. So yes, do I think that it's not worth installing biometrics at origin? No, not at all. You definitely should. Every layer that you have at your disposal should be used, because every avenue of access that the criminals have at their disposal is going to be used. They're just going to use the one that is easiest for them at the time. They're only going to work as hard as we make them work.
And that's the thing is I feel like a lot of people need to, I'm not blaming anybody, but, check your ego at the door here. Like I think the people who are on the front lines, we have to come together in some capacity to put some pen to paper on, this is what we're doing. This is what's working. I mean, I'm a part of the Freight Fraud Prevention Hub with the NMFTA. We talk about a lot of those best practices behind the scenes. And that's the thing is you got to get involved, and it's got to come from the people who are on the front lines operating, because we're going to be the first line of defense, and we'll be the first ones to get ahead of it. Because again, and I'm not naive to think that fraud and theft is going to go away by any stretch of the imagination, but we should make it really fucking hard for them to operate to where it's like they have to start thinking a lot harder about it, because I feel like it's kind of a pretty easy game for them all across the board, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the main things. There's a couple of main things I'm hoping come about from Corca, that bill that's moving through Congress, and one of them is a federal level cargo theft statute that separates out cargo theft and increases penalties for it. Yeah,
no, I agree with that, Danny. Danny, thank you so much for your time here today. How does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you guys got going on?
Yeah, definitely visit us at over-haul.com. Check out what we're doing. Download our freely available quarterly reports for U.S., Mexico, and Brazil. And you can look me up on LinkedIn, Danny Ramon at Overhaul. I'm always trying to post the most relevant open source and some privileged source in actionable intelligence for your supply chain security needs.
Perfect. Danny, thank you so much. If you guys can't find Danny or Overhaul out there, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in direct contact with them. But that is going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank that show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang. Window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh.